Liberal waitress mocks Clint Eastwood in a luxury restaurant. Then he drops a bombshell. Tonight we're stepping into the heart of Manhattan, where luxury isn't just a lifestyle, it's a status symbol. At the Crestwood Hotel, the rich and powerful gather, dressed in the finest suits, sipping $500 whiskey under golden chandeliers. It's a place where image is everything, and respect is reserved for those who look the part. But what happens when an outsider walks in? Not just any outsider, but an old man in a worn-out bomber jacket, a Vietnam veteran's cap, and the quiet presence of someone who's seen more than his fair share of life. No reservations, no fancy suit, just a simple order, a glass of bourbon. To some, he's invisible. To others, an inconvenience. And to one ambitious hotel manager, a mistake she'll never forget. What she doesn't know is that this nobody isn't just any man off the street. He's about to teach her, and everyone watching, a lesson about real power, true class, and the kind of respect that can't be bought. Stay with me, because this is one you won't want to miss. It was a chilly evening in New York City. The grand lobby of the Crestwood Hotel, one of Manhattan's most exclusive five-star establishments, glowed with golden chandeliers and the soft hum of polite conversation. Wealthy guests in designer suits and evening gowns sipped expensive wine. Business tycoons finalized deals over aged whiskey, and socialites took carefully posed selfies in front of the marble fireplace. Amidst all this, an old man in a worn-out bomber jacket stepped through the revolving doors. His jeans were faded, his boots scuffed, and his cap, a Vietnam War veteran's cap, sat snugly atop his silver hair. He looked around, his eyes scanning the space with quiet curiosity, then made his way toward the mahogany bar in the corner. Sitting down at a stool, he gestured to the bartender. "Just a bourbon." "Neat." The bartender, a young man named Jake, nodded respectfully and poured the drink. But a few moments later, a sharp voice cut through the elegance of the room. "Excuse me, sir," a woman in a perfectly pressed uniform said, approaching the bar. "Are you a guest at the Crestwood?" Her name was Victoria Wallace, the hotel's assistant manager, young, ambitious, and fiercely protective of the hotel's reputation. The old man took a slow sip of his bourbon before answering. "No, just stopping in for a drink." Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm afraid we have a policy that the bar is reserved for guests and club members only." The bartender hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Wallace, it's just a drink. He's not—" But Victoria shot him a look that silenced any argument. "This establishment prides itself on exclusivity. If you'd like a drink, there's a nice pub down the street." Several well-dressed patrons nearby watched with amusement, waiting to see how the scene would unfold. The old man remained calm, unaffected. He swirled his bourbon, took another sip, and then set the glass down gently. "That's so," he murmured. "Yes," Victoria said, her voice firmer. "Now, if you'll kindly—" Before she could finish, a voice interrupted her. "Excuse me, what's going on here?" A young waiter named Daniel, who had been working at the hotel for only a few months, had been observing the situation from the other side of the room. Unlike Victoria, he recognized the old man immediately. Victoria turned to him, clearly annoyed. "This gentleman is not a guest. Hotel policy requires—" Daniel cut her off. "Do you know who he is?" She frowned. "Some man trying to sneak into a luxury hotel bar?" Daniel's hands tightened into fists. "That's Colonel James Jim Harris, decorated war hero, served 3 tours in Vietnam, awarded the Silver Star. He's also—" The old man raised a hand, stopping Daniel. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet authority, a lifetime of experience, that made the young waiter fall silent. Victoria, on the other hand, simply scoffed. "That doesn't change anything. This is an exclusive establishment, and we have an image to uphold." For the first time, the colonel's expression changed. He chuckled, a low, gravelly sound filled with something unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone and made a single call. "Yeah, bring the paperwork to the lobby. Now." Victoria crossed her arms. "What, calling some veterans organization to protest?" The colonel just smiled. Minutes later, a sharply dressed older gentleman walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. He went straight to the colonel and handed him the folder. Victoria's irritation turned to confusion, then shock, then dread as the colonel casually pulled out a set of documents and placed them on the bar counter. Ownership papers, with his name on them. Colonel James Harris didn't just buy a drink at the Crestwood. He owned the Crestwood. The silence was deafening. The wealthy guests, the staff, even Victoria herself, all frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. The colonel leaned back, taking another sip of bourbon. "You see, Miss Wallace," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I bought this hotel 3 months ago." Victoria's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "And I bought it for one reason," the colonel continued, "because 50 years ago, when I came home from war, this very hotel wouldn't serve me. Said I wasn't the right kind of clientele, so I made myself a promise." He turned to Daniel and gave him an approving nod. "No one, no matter how they dress, no matter their past, should ever be treated as less than human in a place that calls itself luxury. Because real class isn't about gold chandeliers or $100 steaks. It's about respect." Daniel stood a little taller. The bartender grinned. Even some of the wealthier patrons looked uncomfortable, suddenly reflecting on their own attitudes. As for Victoria, her face flushed with humiliation and regret. The colonel studied her carefully before speaking again. "Now, Miss Wallace, you have a choice. You can leave if you think luxury means turning people away for not looking the part. Or," he gestured to Daniel, "you can learn from people like him, people who understand what true service means." Victoria swallowed hard. Her entire worldview had just shattered. She had spent years climbing the ranks of high-end hospitality, believing exclusivity equaled excellence. And yet, in a single moment, this old man had exposed the emptiness of that belief. She hesitated. Then, voice quieter now, she said, I'd like to stay and learn." The colonel nodded approvingly. "Good choice." And with that, he finished his bourbon. That night, news of the encounter spread through the hotel like wildfire. The next morning, Victoria began her training, this time learning not from fancy hospitality manuals, but from Daniel and the veteran staff, who knew that true service wasn't about policies, but about people. And if you ever walk into the Crestwood Hotel on a chilly evening, you might just see a silver-haired man in a bomber jacket sitting at the bar, sipping a bourbon, ensuring that the lessons of the past are never forgotten. So, what can we learn from this story? In a world obsessed with appearances, status, and wealth, it's easy to forget the true measure of a person, but respect, real respect, isn't about expensive suits or VIP reservations. It's about how we treat people, whether they're dressed in designer brands or a worn-out jacket, whether they own a 5-star hotel or just came in for a drink. The lesson here? Be careful who you judge, because the person you overlook today might just be the one holding the keys to everything tomorrow. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked? Or have you ever misjudged someone only to realize later they were far more than they seemed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And hey, if you enjoyed this story and want more tales of wisdom, justice, and unexpected twists, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to Mr. John Stories so you never miss an upload. We've got more incredible stories coming your way. Some will shock you, some will inspire you, but all of them will make you think. So stick around, because the best stories, they're just getting started. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.